Hi, Misha here, and I suppose I have a bit of an inadvertent Italian or Beretta collection. I never set out to really acquire them, but started off with Carcanos because they were so cheap and also interesting when I was younger, and really fell into Beretta pistols and eventually submachine guns, or rather, semi-automatic versions of them. From the oldest to the newest, I have a pretty good little kind of lineup here. Here's the oldest. This is the MAB 38A. The Wartime simplified 3842. Then we jump to the modern CX4, which while it started off as a police carbine, has evolved into a military gun as the MX4. And then, most recently, the PMXS, the semi-automatic pistol version of Italy's current issue PMX submachine gun. These actually all fire 9mm and really show the history, the evolution of the Italian submachine gun, which is important because Italy, with the Villa Perosa in World War I, was among the first nations to develop the concept before it was even named as such. But something is missing. Something that has a lot of history behind it, something I've wanted to build for a while, and something that hasn't been available. Well, until now. Beretta's very own M12, sometimes also called the PM12, the later version known as the PM12S, and the current version of it would be the PM12S2. If you can't tell, it's seen quite a bit of use and whatnot. And obviously this is a kit, whereas the two lower guns were imported from Italy. Obviously the original submachine guns up here had to be assembled from parts kits, and this is no different. And I'm actually quite excited to get to doing that. First, because it'd be fun, and another to kind of finish my collection. You know, last year I finally finished my Italian rifle collection with the AR-7090, built for me by Interfor USA that I used in Texas. And now, hopefully, we can do this. These parts kits recently became available at Atlantic. A few other places have them. I think Dave Bowman's had them. And in the past, they popped up in small numbers, but they've been relatively hard to get. And I have not opened the box, or the bag, rather, as you see. So we're going to do that. But first, a little bit of historical background. Because it's me, why not? The MAB 38, MAB standing for really one of the coolest nomenclatures in old school speak for submachine gun, Beretta's automatic musket. And it is a longer, heavier gun. Italy, like I said, in World War I, had the Villa Perosa. Arguably a submachine gun, maybe not, but they did have the model 1918, or just model 18, which was a submachine gun. And this would evolve in the interwar period to the 18/30, which was an open bolt police carbine in semi-auto. From there, Tullio Marangoni at Beretta would start work on this in 1935, and it would be put into relatively low rate production in 1938-39. And initially the Army wasn't that interested, so it was a bit of export, and a few units would pick them up. This version here, the 38A, was slightly updated for the Army at the beginning of World War II for Italy, but even it was pretty low rate pickup production. The Army would get a few, the black shirts infamously would have some, and the Air Force and Navy would get some, and some would be exported to Africa and the colonies. It fired 9mm, fed from mags anywhere from 10 to 40 rounds. Had a lot of cool features: a machined receiver, fully adjustable sight, bayonet lug, and as you can tell, over 12-inch barrel, and a rifle style stock complete with cleaning kit compartment. Again, you can kind of tell they weren't really sure what a submachine gun was meant to be at this point. But the war would happen, and so Beretta would introduce this model, the 3842. Now this is built as a pistol, including having a PM59 grip here, but it had a full-length stock back in the back, but in the front it did shorten up. We went to a non-shrouded shorter barrel with built-in 2-slot compensator, fluted barrel, simple 2-position flip rear sight, several other simplifications. We still kept the 2-trigger system and kind of the unique takedown in the back here. In 1943, the Italian government would surrender in the south essentially to the Allies, but the north would be occupied by the Nazis, the Germans, which would incite kind of a semi-civil war thing, and the gun here would be quite iconic, and Beretta would be mostly occupied for most of that. There would be the model 3843, which did away with the barrel fluting, saving some machining steps. And then we would get the model 3844, which would be a true simplification, fixed rear sight, simple end cap, single piece instead of 2, simplified stock, simplified shortened bolt. Yeah, it was quite the simple gun. And I'm just mentioning it because it would lead directly to the 3849, the post-war variant. And then they started calling these like Model 3, Model 4, Model 5 to seem more modern in the 1950s. And Beretta would have success with them, including selling them to West Germany, who would use it as the model, or rather MP1. The Italian government would purchase some, all branches would use them, and they would be a big export for Beretta. And they were all based on these two guns here, just updated, simplified, and made safer, and all that. And now we jump way to the future in the early 21st century with the CX4. On the other hand, this is a true import, not a kit build. This was meant for the civilian market, also the police market. Now mine here has the extra long barrel. These were some interesting contract guns that Classic Firearms had years ago. Done several videos, you can check them out. They feed from Beretta 92 type mags, but they ended up being reasonably successful. India, for example, purchased the Select Fire version with a shorter barrel as the MX4 for their border guards, and some MX4s have also been used by the Italian government, police, carabinieri, and even military. So it's a bit of a success, and it shows Beretta's efforts to kind of modernize. But in reality, the next military submachine gun would be the PMX, based on the Beretta Tomat TP26. Itself an interesting take on some 80s designs. I've done a video on it. You can check them out. Basically, the Tech 9 lives again, sort of. But I wanted this for years because this is a true import too. Don't have to build it from a kit. It's a pistol, and I'm happy to report it's been very reliable. We've had it out shooting a few times, and it's a great little gun. Very pleased with it, and hope to continue shooting it. But this is, of course, the polymer generation. So we went from basically World War II guns to the polymers. There's a big gap there, and that always bugs me in a collection, and for the history. And that's, of course, the M12. And here we have our kit again. This was actually designed primarily by Domenico Salza, who really was the primary designer for Italy's excellent PM59. Well, right after that was adopted, he started turning his attention to a new submachine gun to replace the latest version in the MAB family, known as the Model 5. The earliest prototypes were in 1959, and the first full production models and contracts were in 1961. And in the 70s, we would get the upgraded M12S, and then in the early 90s, we would get the final major version, the M12S2 or PM12S2. And this would actually come with fixed stock, folding stock, several variants, and it would be used by all branches of the Italian armed forces, the Italian police, and would be very successful as an export, and even licensed produced in Brazil by Taurus, and in Indonesia, and elsewhere. So, a lot of history behind it, and I think Beretta guns are very well made, maybe even underrated. So I picked up a few of these kits and fully intend on building them into some autos. So with that kind of background and explanation of why this is important to me, let's see what we get here in this first one. I was debating if I should get this mat out. I did it with the North Korean stuff. I'm already glad I did. There's already residue and stuff in the kit. Obviously, there will not be an intact receiver, and unfortunately, no intact barrel. Thankfully, since it is 9mm and it uses a pretty standard barrel, hopefully we can find a blank to go with. Some good news, Atlantic does have magazines, 40 rounders. I don't know, I think they're about $35 a piece, and the kits are retailing for about $400 at the moment. That could go up, that could go down. And as far as I know, Atlantic has no plans on building these themselves into guns, just because there's not enough kits and, cost prohibitive. So chances are, if you want one as a semi-automatic pistol or carbine or SBR, you're going to have to do the work on your own. First off, let's look at the receiver here. Just because it doesn't include the original machine gun receiver doesn't mean the scrap metal from it can't be included. Per current ATF guidelines, there have to be 3 cuts, and they can't just be perfectly straight. They need to be on a diagonal. If that doesn't sound right, it's because almost every time things get imported, the ATF almost makes up the rules over again. So yeah, different guns, different things. So all pieces are here. And of course, individual kits may be demilled better or worse than others. If you just want to make like a display gun, or use this to measure and pattern, it will work. It has kind of the not corrugated, but kind of the wavy type receiver, kind of like the later World War II MABs. And the sights are still in the gun. Here's the other side. The rear's chopped off. That's going to be a little difficult to weld back together. And on this particular demilled, this front piece is pretty jacked up. Although hopefully it's salvageable. Luckily the 2 main pieces are cut pretty clean. And the magwell, well, there's a little bit of stuff behind here. The magwell, while there's a little bit of a cut in the back here, is more or less intact. And that's good for like feed angle type things. So a little bit of positive there. I'm trying to be optimistic. Again, I know what I'm getting to with kit builds. It's not the importer's fault. The ATF specifies how it is. And of course the barrel too, well, take a look. And again, the pieces are here. If you wanted to make a display gun, you could clean off the slag and put them together, but it'll no longer shoot bullets, that's for sure. Well, not more than once. They even trimmed off the end. Looks like they demanded it be cut in 3 spots as well. You could also, if you're a builder, use this as a pattern for a US barrel. If you get a 9mm barrel blank, you could use this to, know how to cut it at least. So it has purpose. I'm glad they included it versus not. Let's look at something that isn't completely cut up. Hey, the bolt's intact. Now, guns like the Uzi, the VZ26, they're telescoping bolts. This takes it to a whole other level. So the barrel actually goes all the way down in here to keep it from sticking out as far. Has a fixed firing pin, but it is supposedly angled in such a way that it will only ignite when it's fully in battery. Pretty standard large recoil spring. And here is the receiver end cap for disassembly with very small sling swivel that folds out of the way when not in use. So, alright, we got some parts here that are usable without needing to re-weld. But of course, unless you're doing a post sample, which most of us can't do, it's going to require some do-how to make this into a semi-auto bolt. That's going to require some thinking and maybe checking on Weapons Guild. Now let's look at the furniture. So this is the folding stock variant. The hinge piece here. The stock butt plate does fold up. Here's our foregrip with the end cap, made of a Bakelite material, plastic. And here's our main grip. I put the grip safety in it. It's in the front here. One of those safety features. So that's there. At least there is room on the trigger. I'm thinking maybe a hammer fire system would be better for this gun. Grips are quite comfortable for what they are. So that's our furniture. And that's the major components, the big pieces. And then there's a lot of little ones in the bag. Yeah, I'm not going to dump these out. There's trigger in there, pins. Yeah, and Atlantic says some small parts may be missing. That's why if I do these, I always like to get a few kits, because sometimes the receivers aren't salvageable. Sometimes the small pieces you need are missing. Basically, if you buy 4 kits, if you can build 3 guns, and this isn't just for these, but any builds, feel happy. There's almost always kind of one kit that ends up being the sacrificial kit when you try to do these. So that's kind of it, guys. Let me see just how much I can put this together on the table, and we'll end with that. Well, not too terribly far thanks to the slag on the receiver. Couldn't quite get the part to lock the stock in to go all the way in. I guess I could hammer it, but I'm not going to do that. And the bolt won't slide in the receiver because of the slag. Again, I could hammer it, but what's the point? So it is all here. And I think you can kind of see the evolution already. The mag wells are somewhat similar, just lower down. These would have had a type of epoxy paint type finish on them. Again, it has the kind of corrugated receiver like this one does. They definitely, have a family heritage, and it actually does extend to the latest gun. At first, you might not see it with the PMX, but honestly, when they were designing this in Italy, they had special attention to try to keep the dimensions and the controls as similar to the M12, especially the letter M12S and S2, as they could. And in a lot of ways, it is definitely spiritually the same, if not identical. So once I do get it built, it'll be a neat little family of Italian subguns from the World War II era to the Cold War era to the 21st century. And we'll see how this build goes. Might not be as bad as you think, even though getting this kit out was very dirty. Again, I'm very happy I dragged the mat out. I do think building this either into an SBR or a carbine is the better bet, because if you do pistol, you're going to have to remove the foregrip and the buttstock. And because it is a telescoping bolt, a lot of your barrel is internal, so even if you give it a 16-inch barrel, it may not look as bad as some other guns. So that would be my thing, especially since we're going to have to use a US barrel anyway. Might as well get a longer one and make it into a neat little carbine to kind of go with that CX4 we looked at. So what do you think? I just wanted to give a preview of this kit, since we have been looking at kits and then building them up over time. I'm excited for it. It won't be easy, but many fun things in life are not. Anyway, appreciate you hanging out. Please do comment if you're attempting this foolhardy adventure too. As always, if you could, please like, share, and subscribe. And if you'd like to help support the channel, go over and check out the link to Patreon. We do Q&As, sometimes we do polls, other fun stuff when we have time. This is Misha. Catch you very soon. Well, next time. Postscript, I was backing everything up and forgot to show you the other end cap. I assume you knew it was there, but just in case, here it is with the front swivel and retains the barrel. So, it's there too. Alrighty, this time for real. Catch you later next time.